We're going to post the agenda on the screen.
You're ready.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the City of Milpitas Economic and Development and Trade Commission regular meeting. On the screen, you have the agenda for today, March 8th, 2021 at 4:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Is there a motion to call a meeting to order? Or I just call a meeting to order, right?
Chair, you do, and Nicole will help us with that.
Okay. And next up to call a meeting to order, Nicole?
Oh, I think we go straight on to the Pledge of Allegiance, no?
Okay, yes. We're on to the Pledge of Allegiance. In honor of International Women's Day, we will let Juliet lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance.
To the flag.
Am I on mute? I'm sorry. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty for justice for all. Thank you for that, Chris. I was honored.
See?
Yes.
Like I said, you're talking to a real dude. At this time, we'd like to take roll call.
Okay, Chair Norwood, I can help with that. Starting with yourself, Chair Norwood.
I'm here.
Vice Chair McNeil.
Here.
Commissioner Inderjit Mundra.
Present.
Commissioner Lynn Rice. Our new Commissioner Prakash Daryani.
I'm here.
And alternate Commissioner Deepak Aswati.
Here.
And alternate Commissioner Juliet Gomez.
Present.
And I'd like to note that alternate Commissioner Deepak Aswati is seated for the unfilled and vacant hospitality seat, and alternate Commissioner Juliet Gomez is seated for the unfilled and vacant real estate seat.
Thank you. Thank you, and for clarifying the seating of the alternates as well. Item 5 on the agenda, only item 5, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay.
Nicole, roll call.
Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
Commissioner Daryani,
Yes.
Commissioner Aswati,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the agenda. We also need a motion. We got a motion and second, and we've got the roll call. And now we're on to item number 6, approval of the minutes for February 8th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Chair McNeil or Vice Chair McNeil. Is there a second?
Second it.
We have a second by our newest commissioner getting right involved on his first day. That's what we like to see. Is there a roll call?
Yes. Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
Commissioner Aswati,
Yes.
Commissioner Daryani,
Yes.
Well,
And
if I
Commissioner-
may, he would actually have to abstain.
All right. He has to
Since
abstain. He
the
wasn't there.
Oh, right. Okay, and lastly, Commissioner Gomez.
Abstain.
Okay.
Awesome. Item 7 on the agenda, and we are almost right back on schedule. The public forum. Oral public comments may be provided live during the commission meeting by first registering for the Zoom meeting in advance by providing an email address and a name. And there is the link to register in advance for the webinar. If you could scroll down on the agenda a little bit, please. Right, after registering, you'll receive a confirmation email So it is 4:36. We will give folks 2 minutes or 1 minute to sign up for public forum, or would you just like to continue to proceed? Are there any suggestions from staff?
Well, we have to make sure that there is a public forum, Chair Norwood. Nicole, do we have any public speakers today?
No, no public comment today.
Chair Norwood, we can proceed.
Okay. I just want to be mindful that if this is the first time that they see how to be a part of the public forum, they may not move fast enough to be able to interject during the public forum, especially if this is the first time that they see it by watching it through a Zoom meeting. So that's just FYI. Number 8, commission member announcements. Who would like to start? I thought I heard the new. Okay, see, I thought I heard the new commissioner say he's volunteering. That's what I thought. Maybe I made a mistake. I'm not sure.
Well,
Alex was going to introduce because I'm just new. I'm just trying to learn the protocol. So when you say announcement, this announcement, I have to introduce myself, or Alex, I thought you were going to introduce me first.
Yeah, Chair Norwood, one of the announcements I was going to give was formally introducing him. So I would do that after the commission provides announcements. I can go after that.
Okay. Okay. You let him off the hook. That's okay. All right. So who would like to make the first? Oh, Casey, Vice Chair McNeil.
I have no announcements.
Nicole, could you roll call on the commissioners?
Yes. Chair Norwood?
We are, the Milpitas Unified School District is in the process of resuming in-person learning within the school district. So there will be more activity around the city as it relates to education in the city. Each of the schools is working on their own individual plans. Teachers are starting to come back to their classrooms to get them set up the way that they want them to be, so they can do both distance and in-person learning at the same time. Many of them are super excited, and the catalyst was the vaccine. That's my announcement.
Thank you, Chair Norwood. And Vice Chair McNeil?
No announcement.
Commissioner Mundra?
No announcement.
Commissioner Aswati?
No announcement.
Commissioner Dariani?
No announcement.
And Commissioner Gomez?
No announcement from me.
Thank you.
Norwood, may staff proceed with announcements?
Yes, staff may proceed with announcements.
Thank you, sir. I recently received a message from our City Council liaison, City Council member Dominguez. She will not be joining us today. She apologizes, but will catch up with us next time. So I have several announcements, and one that was already been discussed. It's International Women's Day. And so today is definitely a day to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women from all walks of life. This is also a day to challenge gender bias and equality that exists. So just wanted to say congratulations to International Women's Day and everybody that's joining us today. The next announcement is we have a new commissioner, as you all know. On March 2nd, City Council adopted and approved a new Economic Development and Trade Commissioner, Commissioner Parkesh Dairani. He joins us today. It's his first meeting. We're very excited to welcome him. I had a really nice conversation with him earlier today, and I think he's going to fit right in. So please welcome me please join me in welcoming Commissioner Dairani. Commissioner Dairani, if you'd like to say a few words, please do so now.
It's my pleasure to join the Economic Development Commission of the City of Milpitas. I'm a long-term resident of City of Milpitas. I've been living here since 1988. My business is also in the city of Milpitas for the last 30 years. So I'm really excited to be part of this commission. And based on my past experience and serving other economic advisory councils at the federal and the state level, I'll do my best to contribute positively so we can make this collectively, we can make this city a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one more announcement on behalf of staff. If that's okay, Chair Norwood.
Yes.
Thank you. So this weekend there's an approval of a federal relief package. So the Senate passed the COVID relief package this weekend, providing $15 billion to the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan Program. Severely impacted small businesses with fewer than 10 workers will be given priority for some of the money. The relief plan also allocates over $25 billion for a grant program, specifically for bars and restaurants. Eligible restaurants can receive up to $10 million for various purposes, including payroll, rent, and PPE. The Paycheck Protection Program would get an additional $7 billion, and more nonprofit organizations will be eligible. A little over $1 billion is also added to the Shared Venue Operators Grant. And the Employee Retention Credit is extended until year end. And lastly, $175 million would be used for outreach and promotion, creating a community navigator program to help target eligible businesses. And so the House will now take up the vote this week. Some more information to come. At this point, that is all of staff's updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Exciting times. Truly exciting times. We are now to business item number 9, fiscal benefits, 9A, excuse me, fiscal benefits of employment land study, created by the Economic Development and Trade Commission. Presenters Alex Andrade and Daniel DeGue Sr. This evening. And Alex, if you could give us a precursor, that would be very helpful.
Yes, well, the setting the stage is part of the presentation, so I'm just going to go ahead and go right into it. Ron, can you go to the next page, please? In the last 3 consecutive fiscal years, the city has had some real challenges as it relates to revenues. What you see in front of you is a $16 million cumulative net revenue loss for the fiscal years of fiscal year 18-19, 19-20, and the current fiscal year 2021. The majority of that has to do with the fact that our sales tax revenues have declined radically, as well as our transit occupancy tax, otherwise known as our hotel tax. I want to start there because it's really important. The fiscal health of the city has never been more critical. And so the 2 items that are before you today are going to help us get the city back on track with future revenue opportunities and growth opportunities for the city. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides are specifically for Commissioner Tarani. As a welcome, you should know that our city council has 7 priorities at the moment, and one of them happens to be economic development and job growth. We will make sure to share more information later. Next slide, please. So, as a reminder, the Office of Economic Development's mission is to provide services and resources to the real estate brokerage community, the business community, the real estate development community, all with ensuring that we're attracting, retaining, and expanding our business community. Employment opportunities for area residents and stimulating the local economy through various revenue sources that include sales tax, hotel tax, and property taxes. And we do this, and always keeping in mind that we're looking for a positive balance between growth, equity, and the economic vitality of the city. Next slide, please. You're going to see various slides that are part of our economic development strategy. Just want to remind you where we are today and some of the challenges that we have before us. The workforce in Milpitas stands at about 52,000 people. However, only about 12% of our local residents work locally. That means that the majority of our residents are leaving our city Monday through Friday. We want to create strong, sound employment opportunities locally. We have heard about a desire for many residents in Milpitas. They want to be closer to home. They want to be closer to their families. So part of today's discussion is going to touch on that. Next slide, please. Related to workforce, what you see before you on the screen are the top 10 occupations by numbers. You see that software developers and programmers stand at almost 2,900 employees locally. And all the titles or occupations in white represent tech and advanced manufacturing, except for labor and material movers. But that you see in red, we specifically highlighted these positions because the city is over-retailed. And Dr. Enrico Moretti, who's a professor at UC Berkeley, has hypothesized that one technology job creates 5 service sector jobs. And we see that playing out right here. Retail salespersons, fast food and counter workers, waiters and waitresses, cashiers and cooks. These are important jobs within the fabric of our community. The unfortunate thing is these jobs might pay $30,000 to $39,000 per year. And it may mean that some of these individuals may be house burdened. That means that they're paying more than 30% of their income toward housing. When you add transportation, they're fully burdened. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have a real strong and diverse workforce by creating strong job opportunities. Things are changing. Retail has been evolving. At this point, every job is a tech job, but the 4th industrial revolution is here among us. We have emerging technologies. We're in the middle of Silicon Valley. Technology is our economic driver. We need to ensure that we have people who can compete for really good, sound jobs locally. Next
Alex,
slide.
could you quick hold, Lynn, Commissioner Rice reached out saying that she's either trying to get in a room or she's on mute or something.
Thank you, Chair Norwood. We'll have Ron Long and Nicole Inamine help out with Lynn getting on.
Awesome. All right,
Commissioner
thank you.
Rice, thank you for letting us know. This next slide has to do with our economic development strategy. I won't go deep in here, but I just wanted to remind you of our 7 strategy areas. Tonight, we're going to talk about the fiscal benefits of employment lands, as well as the Milpitas Metro project specific plan. And both of those very critical projects are a part of our economic development strategy. Next slide, please.
I'd like to just briefly say thank you, Alex and team, for what you prepared for this week's or this month's presentation and the time that you took to prepare in advance. It was extremely helpful. It was extremely thorough. It allowed me to invest time into understanding more of all the work that is going on or has been going on for a while. So I really appreciate staff's effort on this comprehensive presentation for us to prepare for a lively discussion today. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
I think this was very helpful to me, particularly coming in new. So getting this information and having a dialogue with Alex and Daniel was quite a primer for me to come up to the speed. So thank you, Alex, and thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, I concur. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, commissioners. It's I'll borrow a phrase from Chair Norwood that it's the dream. I'm trying to remember the team makes the dream work. There it is.
Right, the teamwork makes the
Alex
dream work.
The entire team. It was very, very helpful, and especially Daniel calling and asking about all the questions. That was great. This was the first time that we got so much involved and so much information in advance was given. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll take this opportunity to thank the economic development team, as well as our planning team, the consultant team that will be talking about the Milpitas Metro. You're going to get a great presentation just shortly. This is my last slide before I hand it over to Daniel. So I just want to leave you with this. The general plan update is happening now. There's 14 growth opportunity site areas. It's going to council tomorrow night, perhaps for adoption. We hope of those areas, from an economic development perspective and a job growth perspective, there are 3 main areas where we see amazing opportunities for the city. It's the Southwest employment area. That's part of the general plan. Think of the area around Tasman and McCarthy Boulevard. That general area right now is zoned for light residential. Depending on what happens tomorrow, if adopted, it could move to zoning that would include business park and research and development, along with allowing for additional density through floor area ratio increases. I bring this up because there's great potential there for business traction. The other opportunity site area is what's going to be known as the New Pacific Plan, formerly Midtown Gateway Main Street. That is a great gateway opportunity for folks that are coming into the city off of Calaveras and going into our historic downtown area. So that's a plan that our planning department is going to be leading real soon. And then getting to where we are today, the Innovation District, we envision this district, which is a part of the Milpitas Metro. We are connected through BART and the Transit Center. This BART, after 50 years of existence, finally is coming into Santa Clara County. It connects us north, south, west. It's a complete game changer. So we want to work with you and ensure that we can increase the quality of life for folks around the Milpitas metro area as well as the rest of the city. So we're really, really excited about these future growth opportunity sites. With that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Daniel Degu, our Economic Development Coordinator. Next slide, please.
I do have a question.
Sure.
If that's okay. In the very first slide, just curious, so there's a $60 million city deficit. How does that compare to other cities around Milpitas?
Well, just about every city across the land is having to deal with their various declines in revenues. There are some cities that are better prepared, and that's actually a really good segue into this conversation because we're looking at economic and planning resiliency. So depending on how we move forward with the benefits of employment lands and as well as the Milpitas Metro, it puts a city in a better fiscal health position in the future. So there are some challenges throughout. We believe that the new stimulus package will have some funding for cities throughout the United States in order to help in that perspective. I hope that gives you an answer, Commissioner McNeil.
Alex, I have a follow-up question on that.
Yes, we have our Assistant City Manager, Shwini Kantak, is with us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just to add, good afternoon, commissioners. I just wanted to add on to what Alex shared. So we did look at what other cities, how their revenues were impacted. And of course, the makeup of revenues is different for each city, as Alex mentioned. But in general, everybody saw somewhere around a 10 to 15% decline in revenues. And that was kind of in keeping in line with what we were seeing as well. So hopefully that helps. So it's percentage of the budget.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up question on that one, Alex, would be that you're showing $16 million for 3 fiscal years, 2018, 19, 19, 20, and 2021. Am I correct? I can understand and appreciate that because of COVID situation, city of Milpitas is no different than any other city. All the cities, they've experienced decline in the revenue because of COVID. Can we differentiate what is attributable to fiscal year, say 2020 versus prior years? Is the trend is upward? Prior year was very small and suddenly it ballooned to $16 million in 2020. Do we have a data that what was the deficit in the prior years versus 2020?
So I want to be thoughtful of that question and steer it towards a request of financials through another planning commission, through this commission for the sake of this presentation today. Because what you're asking goes into different levels of detail that we could possibly discuss here with the assistant city manager, but it would take us I would probably say at minimum 15 to 20 minutes in another direction.
Okay,
So-
I can table that.
If
Awesome.
I could also add, I had the opportunity to speak with our deputy city manager / finance director last week, and we were talking about when time is right that he would actually come and present to the Economic Development and Trade Commission and just give a high level overview of the city's financial health. Could be around May or June.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I am going to hand it over to Daniel Degu.
Thank you, Alex. And good afternoon, distinguished members of the Economic Development and Trade Commission. I hope you and your loved ones are all staying safe and healthy as we navigate through this COVID-19 pandemic. As Director Andrade mentioned, my name is Daniel Degu, and I am the city's Economic Development Coordinator. Before introducing the draft scope of work, I would like to spend the first few minutes of my presentation providing background as to why this project is particularly important to the Milpitas community at this time. There's been already some really good discussions about why we're here, and these are all very good questions, and I look to kind of expand on that just a little bit. Earlier in the presentation, Director Andrade mentioned that only 12% of our residents work in Milpitas. This is a number we are looking to increase here at the city. What we also know about our employment base is that only 28% of the city's land is designated as employment land. This means that the city has a very limited supply of employment land, so it's very important that we preserve and protect these lands for future economic job growth. Next slide, please. As some of you may already know, our largest industry sector in Milpitas is technology and advanced manufacturing. This industry actually makes up 26% of all jobs in the city. So with roughly 52,000 jobs in 2019, approximately 13,500 was specifically in technology and advanced manufacturing alone. So this is very significant to the city, which I will explain in the next slide. Next slide, please. So our employment lands. Our employment lands provide economic benefits and community benefits to the Milpitas community. They do this in two major ways. One, they provide significant contributions to the city's fiscal stability by providing substantial net positive revenue to the city's general fund, which supports essential and critical city services, which we all experience every day. I will further elaborate on this topic in a future slide as I go over the different tasks that the consultant would be conducting during this scope of work. And then two, these employment lands are very important because they create high quality jobs for the community, and it's a cyclical approach. So when we have these good quality jobs, they obviously provide tax base to the city, and the city then can provide services. So there's a cyclical factor on this. Next slide, please. So the project looks to achieve 5 very important goals, and I'll go through these very carefully for the membership. Number 1, it's to assure that the city's fiscal sustainability with a diverse set of fiscal revenues. So we want to ensure that we have fiscal sustainability in the city. Number 2 is to preserve and protect employment land uses to retain and create new jobs that can benefit the community. Number 3 is to stimulate the creation of an innovation district that will encourage employment generating uses while integrating housing. We understand and recognize that housing is very important to the ecosystem. And so a balance of housing and a balance of good jobs is incredibly important to the viability for the city. Number 4, to encourage creative placemaking and strengthen connections to and from the Milpitas Transit Center. As Mr. Andrade mentioned, we do have a game changer in the city where we have the BART station. And it really provides us with a tremendous opportunity to have great jobs and to have great housing. So we want to leverage that and maximize that. And number 5 is to leverage the city's existing business ecosystem to attract new anchors to support the creation of the Milpitas Innovation District. Next slide. So the next 4 slides will provide the commission with an overview of each proposed task. Next slide, please. So the first task, the fiscal impact analysis task, looks at changes in government costs against changes in government revenues. This analysis is very important to study during an economic recession. The example before you shows that the city is the city is relying on employment land uses to balance its budget. So when there's an economic recession and we don't get to utilize our existing employment lands, it could be very troublesome to the city. So we want to make sure there's a good balance and that we're preserving and protecting our lands for future employment base. Next slide, please. The development scenarios analysis. This analysis focuses on aiming and striking a balance between residential and commercial growth. The consultant would evaluate the various impacts and benefits that could result from different scenarios and compare these results to give a comprehensive look at the implications of each alternative. So it's looking at by having more housing or less housing versus more employment jobs versus less. So the consultant would really evaluate this and provide us with the best balance. Next slide, please. The third task is focusing on the occupation and wage analysis task. This is important because it allows us to study the approximate average wage associated with existing building types located throughout the city. Next slide, please. This next slide is about the innovation district. And this is the fourth task and a very important one. Before I review the task, I would like to define what an innovation district is. According to the Brookings Institute, which is known as America's most prestigious think tank, an innovation district is a geographic area where leading edge anchor institutions and companies cluster and connect with startups, business incubators, and accelerators. Because we have the BART station, we have the ability to develop our own Milpitas specific innovation district.
Go now, okay?
And currently the planning department and their consultant, Architectural Studios, will be providing a comprehensive picture of the city's effort in developing such a district. But we will be also focusing on this particular concept for this particular project. Next slide. So the Innovation District Framework task enables the city to better understand what actions and points of influence are in the city's control and what critical steps are needed to influence economic growth within the Milpitas Innovation District. This framework is designed to complement the Milpitas Metro Specific Plan by focusing on design, implementation, and management of a formalized innovation district. And this will be my next two slides. Next slide, please. So the next steps, we're here this evening to get feedback from the commission. After we receive feedback from the commission, we will then go through a process of selecting the consultant and shortly thereafter commence the work for this project. And then by the summer, we look to come back before the commission and provide a progress report and update. Next slide. So with that, this is a recommendation slide. The recommendation to receive staff presentation and provide feedback on the fiscal benefits of employment lands scope of work. The Economic Development and Trade Commission is encouraged to provide staff feedback in order to enhance and/or improve the scope of work. So we are most certainly here to listen, to understand what we can improve on and enhance so we can develop a very good scope to benefit the community of Milpitas. And with that, I would like to hand it back off to the chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for the detailed explanation. Even in the midst of the extracurricular activity in your background, thank you for the focus. We really appreciated that. Are there any questions from any members of the committee to be documented, and then we can determine the best time and place to get them answered?
I have a couple of comments, Daniel, on, but first of all, I think this is a great presentation, and I appreciate having discussions with you a couple of days ago. On the employment and occupation and wage analysis, I think what we need to look at it, there are a couple of things I've walked away. We have 28% of the land that is designated for employment versus 12% of the residents, they work in the city. So I see from statistical point of view, there's a disconnect between the employment land versus the number of people, city of Milpitas residents working here. So we need to look at it to how we can attract local talent to work in the city of Milpitas. That will be helpful to the city. Occupation wage analysis, I think that's very important to really understand what the problem is and how we can address the issue. On the innovation district, last time we spoke, and I want to again share my thoughts with you. There was a time, and I think we can look into it further. I don't want to take Commission's time today. But one of the things that I'd like to follow up discussions with you, that there was a plan a few years ago for NASA Science Research Center. They were providing a land and some incentives for R&D, where R&D has already been done by NASA Science Research Center. They wanted some company to come and commercialize it. I would recommend that at some point in time, not today, we can have some dialogue that might be another added revenue, another attraction for the city of Milpitas to draw more R&D, particularly R&D that has already been done, to take the R&D and commercialize it, or what we call it, monetize it. So I don't take a lot of time today, but I'll come back and have discussions with you and Alex on that side.
I think the good news there for you, Commissioner, is the fact that a number of the things that you've said, they've shared with us in terms of plans that they've developed and that are in process. So you're going to see some of those things answered in the presentation as it moves forward. So these are great points. So thank you for sharing those.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And let's see.
I did have one question, real quick. And follow up on Commissioner's question. On the R&D section, we see that the average salary is 70% higher than the next one. Has there been a projection of whether or not that's sustainable over the future, or how will that, I mean, is there, we know that is the way it is now, but will R&D always be that much higher than the other occupational wages? I don't know if that was part of the study, and that's just my comment. You don't have to answer. I just want to make sure that is being considered.
Commissioner, Vice Chair, I can answer that quickly, if the chair is okay with that.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's something we will look at. It's really related to trends, so we will be focusing on that in this report as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions by commissioners?
I have a couple of things, if I may.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So this is a really pretty fantastic report, and it's multifaceted. So really this is awesome, and thank you for that. So a couple of things that I would like to kind of question is, do you have a priority on, 2 or 3 things that would make the most difference that we should focus on? And you can, answer that later. Thank you.
Thank you. Very lively discussion. Thank you, everyone. I don't see the agenda on the screen anymore.
Norwood, we do have Commissioner Lynn Rice, who's on the phone. I think we've had some challenges with her microphone. Is she on now?
This is Commissioner Rice. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Great.
Yeah, for some odd reason, no worries. It's just not recognizing my Simon email as an invite, as being invited to the meeting. So I don't know, maybe there was a glitch or something with it. So that's why, for some odd reason, it's not working. But I'm on now.
Yeah, and she's been here since the beginning of the meeting, so we'll reconcile, update the roll call and all those things as well. We just couldn't hear her due to Zoom because she had texted me. Okay, awesome.
I'll make sure to reflect that in the.
Say that again.
I'll make sure to reflect that in the minutes.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, there needs to be so there's a recommendation to receive the staff presentation.
I
Norwood, if I may, just wanted to remind you that we may have somebody on public comment, so we'd like to
Awesome.
check that first.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Nicole, are there any public comments?
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay.
No public comment?
We have no public comment. And this is an item for recommendation. Recommend that we receive the staff presentation. Where to go?
I make a motion to receive the presentation.
Ron, can you please the agenda back up?
We have a motion to receive the presentation. Is there a second?
I second.
I'll second it.
Everybody seconds it.
Oh, you know what? I don't know why.
Commissioner Rice will second.
All right, Commissioner Rice second. So then now we roll call.
Great. Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
Commissioner Aswati,
Yes.
Commissioner Rice,
Yes.
Commissioner Dariani,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Awesome. Staff presentation received. Item B, Milpitas Metro Specific Plan. Planning Director, some other folks.
Thank you. I will go ahead and kick this off, and we'll then send it over to our Planning Director, Ned Thomas. If it's okay, we're ready to. Chair Norwood, would you like to read the item or the background, or do you want to just go ahead and get right into it?
It's not available on the screen anymore. So
okay, why don't we go ahead and get right into it? I'm going to start by just providing an overview of our vision of the Innovation District, just to kind of set the stage. But remember that the Milpitas Metro is really about designing and developing a complete district. Please keep that in mind. When we talk about the Innovation District, we envision it as a place that allows for current manufacturing, warehousing, and mini storage around the transit center to evolve into space for emerging technologies. And that could be a myriad of things. It could be artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, perhaps flying vehicles, which we're not too far from, robotics, 3D printing, and the list continues. This is an area within the Metro specific plan that we believe will be repositioned to host established technology, business parks, technology, businesses, startup, business incubators, accelerators, and research institutions in a compact, transit-oriented, and accessible business cluster around the transit center. We have a multimodal transit center. We've been talking about the game-changing events related to that. So for us, the proposed innovation district will be an employment destination with modern office, research and development buildings, flex space, for people to interact through creative collisions, and an innovative ecosystem. This ecosystem, we believe, would be supported by a risk-taking environment, a lot like Silicon Valley. It would be a place that facilitates idea generation with experimentation, being central to the success of the innovation district. So the city aims to plan for a well-connected innovation district with proximity to public transit, infrastructure that supports bike paths, pedestrian scale sidewalks, social gathering places, and of course, the much needed high-speed fiber. With growing innovation economy in Milpitas, it will require leaders to plan long-term, but with short-term flexibility to shape the future growth strategies. The vision includes shaping our urban development practices to build a culture of creativity, innovation, inclusivity, and equity, and agility to help advance opportunities for innovation. When it comes to the Innovation District, the Economic Development Strategy, which you are very familiar with, the General Plan Update, and the Milpitas Metro Specific Plan that we're going to discuss now, all of those documents reference a modern 21st century location that puts Milpitas at the heart of Silicon Valley through the Innovation District. We won't only discuss the Innovation District, we'll dive into the area around the Great Mall and other opportunities around the Milpitas metro area. So with that, I'm going to introduce our planning director, Ned Thomas, he will kick it off. He'll introduce the planning team and the consultant team. So just want to let you know, we're obviously very excited about this conversation, and I hope you are too. Mr. Thomas, handing it over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, Chair Norwood, members of the commission. We're happy to be with you this afternoon. If you've been watching council meetings over the past several months, you will have seen this team make a number of presentations on different policy aspects of what has come to be known as the Milpitas Metro Plan. And there are, as Alex just noted, there are several aspects of this that are directly related to the economic development activities of the city, not the least of which is the Innovation District that we've been talking about. And these projects all intersect very nicely. So I will introduce everyone, then I'll turn the time over to our primary consultant, Jane Lynn from Urban Field Studio, who will be making the presentation, and helping her with that will be Christina Paul from Metropolitan Planning Group, also known as M Group, and also our economic development advisor, I guess we'll Tafion Rice Evans from Economic Planning Systems, or EPS. We also have our project manager, Kevin Riley. He's at the city and is managing this project specifically. And we also have our planning manager, Jessica Garner, and myself to help answer any questions. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Jane to start the presentation. And we again appreciate your time and interest in this topic.
Thank you so much, Ned. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you commissioners today about the Milpitas Metro Plan. We are going to show you some of our work that we have done over the last year. The plan kicked off about almost exactly a year ago. And so we should celebrate that. First, I'm going to queue up our presentation here. And is everyone able to see? Okay, great. So what we'd like to cover today is really an overview of the work we've been doing so far, and then really focusing in on the land use opportunities, especially around employment. And then we'll do a really short market overview because it helps to always know how this fits within the rest of the area. And then we'll talk about some of the commercial opportunities. So just to make sure it's clear, what we have for the Milpitas Metro Plan is building upon the Milpitas Transit Area Specific Plan, so the TASP. That was adopted in 2008, and we were initially going to do just an update, but this turned out to be more than an update, and it is now renamed as well. And since we started this project, the transit station has opened, and we're so excited about that. We just wanted to share this aerial that compares the planning period that was occurring prior to the last plan being written, and so in 2007 and with 2019, and you can see a dramatic change in what is on the ground. So we'll go over that quite a bit. The Milpitas Metro Plan vision is really to complete what has already started. So the aerial was showing you how things have really transformed, and this plan really is about completing that neighborhood, and that has many different components to it, including expanding the neighborhood services and variety of retail, and this importantly to preserve space for jobs near transit. We'll also talk a little bit about the connections within the planned area to make it easier to access, and also a little bit about the identity as well. But there's quite a few topics. We're definitely trying to narrow it down for you today. Just to do a little overview of what has come online. I'm sure you've seen it yourself, but it's always good to see there are many new housing formats that are out there, townhouses and multifamily housing that has been built over the last couple of years. And there are a lot of improvements that have been made as well to pathways in between those housing developments and parks and places together. But we're not all the way there yet, so there's even more to be done, and actually the McCandless Park is still under construction and we're getting there. We're just we're trying to focus on some of the other spaces other than the ones that have already been built in our plan. And underway, there is a lot of activity. There's a lot planned. There's a lot going on, especially on Great Mall Parkway, new housing, new mixed use, and just a dramatic transformation that should come about in the very shortly. So this just is this was included in your memo for this meeting. This is the changes in development since 2008, and dramatically, there has been almost 7,000 units added to this area. However, when it comes to office and retail, it really falls short. And hotel, there is something in the works, but you know, this is something that we want to focus on today in our meeting. What make more employment lands happen with this next specific plan? We also want to just remind you that we're looking to the past a little bit because the last TASP was written and it occurred right as the Great Recession happened. And here we're in a really weird time with the pandemic, and we're writing this plan with that in mind. And so, you know, no one can really foresee that there was actually a lot of activity that happened to make the plan happen. And so when we're thinking out with our plan 20 years, that a lot can happen in 20 years. And that's always a very exciting thing, although we just can't see the future. So that is something to keep in mind as cycles go. We're coordinating this plan. Daniel was mentioning, and so was Alex, mentioning the general plan is going on right now. There's also many other plans that we're trying to coordinate with, like the Milpitas Parks and Recreation Master Plan and all the other kinds of planning that's happening at the city. So we're doing our best to make sure we're all aligned. We want to also just point out here that, you know, this is a really unique area with incredible connections, which I'm sure you're also very familiar with. But just to reiterate, BART is the newest one, but there's all sorts of other rail and freeways, and the connections to the Milpitas Metro really put it at the center. Where else will you have light rail and BART intersecting like this at the VTA Transit Center and the bus transit center there? That's brand new. This is really an incredible spot. It's between 880 and 680 and has great access. It is no wonder that it will be a really hot spot. And so we do look at these incredible interstates and arterials, and we look at the transit and rail, and we think to ourselves, wow, that's really great. The one thing it doesn't connect very well is pedestrians. So there's a lot of barriers to walking and biking in the area that we will be addressing with this plan. A lot of them involve trying to cross big streets like Montague Expressway and Great Mall Parkway, and then also trying to cross creeks and also make connections between all our sub-districts. So we have creeks, streets, and districts, and we're just trying to find different ways to bridge and make sure that the pedestrian walking environment is as pleasant as possible so that people will find an alternative to driving when they can. So those are all the highlighted in blue and green are the potential connections that are happening. One that is really important that I want to point out is right here. There's the new South Milpitas Boulevard extension near BART, and there's a possibility of crossing over Berryessa into the Innovation District. That is one that we'd like to sort of bring up as an idea. So just to also show you a few things about the streets themselves, Great Mall Parkway is one, we want to make you think that there's a potential for the Great Parkway. So there's a lot of new development coming here with Lion Living and Summerhill building on the south side of it. On the other side is the VTA bus depot and the Great Mall, and that whole street could be something quite amazing. So imagining what that could be is what we've been trying to do. And we're also thinking about how it works as a street, and it does serve cars very well, but it doesn't serve pedestrians and bicyclists as well. And also that rail overhead is not really treated in a visually aesthetic way. So some of the ideas we've been putting out there is to put public art on that light rail structure and make it more of an identity feature for the area. The other is to narrow the lanes a little bit and allow for more space. There's plenty of space for protected bike lanes and for a linear park along Great Mall Parkway. So those are some of the ideas there. And here's a rendering of what could be. These are definitely to tease us all with some kind of idea, and they're more or less a dream of some kind. So they're not necessarily what we propose, but it's an inspiration for what this area could be. And we hope you think this is something that would be transformative for the identity of the area. We've been talking a lot about public spaces and what it means to create a place. So placemaking is a really big part of the plan as well. And we really want people to find this as a complete neighborhood with lots of great places to go. So placemaking and trying to find your way around. Well, one of the ways we think that you can do that is, of course, with signs and wayfinding. So that's sort of like level one. So, basic covering the basics, making sure you know where you are when you come out of the BART station and that you've arrived in Milpitas. But level two is creating a place that has a sense of place, where you really see a lot of people and you have a reason to go there, and there's like all these destinations. And in fact, the image I saw earlier of Legoland and Great Mall really has a lot of plans for it to be a destination filled. I mean, it already is. It's where people go regionally. So, the idea is to expand on that and build upon it and see that evolve as a destination. So that will really be something that is very highly possible. And then, of course, building further upon that is to make sure this is a place everyone can remember, and you can do that with all sorts of things, especially public art and open spaces and really creative architecture, so visually memorable buildings. And I think that is something that we hope to influence in the plan and inspire for what could happen in the future. And of course, when we talk about open space and places to go, we actually mean a lot of different kinds of things. And in the urban spaces that go on in between buildings, there's so many kinds of places that would help people, give people a place to gather, give people a reason to meet. And we all really wish we could meet each other right now, especially in person. But this is part of the idea and part of the plan. So I'm going to turn this over to Christina, who will talk about a little bit more about the actual land uses we're including in the plan, and also cover some of our focus areas such as the Great Mall and the Innovation District in more detail. Christina?
If you don't mind, I'd like to take a quick 5-minute, not a 5-minute pause, but ask any of the commissioners, do you have any questions on that particular section? If you do, please write them down. So as we move forward, because at the end, if we're not able to get to your questions, they're going to be submitted to Alex and his team, and they'll be delivered, and then answers will be provided back to you. So we want to make sure everything gets answered for us, even though the decision is already moving forward to council and those things, and they've already seen it. We just want to make sure that our questions get answered based on the investment of time that everybody's put into that. Does that work for everybody?
It's fine.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
So are there any questions on that first section that we just saw? Just jot them down. And then we can move on to the next section.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Very nice to meet you. I'm Christina Paul, principal with M Group. So on the next slide, we will start to talk about the area that we're in. We have broken Milpitas Metro into these 5 different districts: the Great Mall District, Piper, which is largely developed, the Innovation District, which also includes the BART station area, Tango, and then McCandless down in the south. We are thinking about how this whole area can evolve. Jane talked a little bit about how we didn't really see the commercial development that was planned for in the transit area specific plan. So we're thinking about how to encourage that, as well as how to allow some more residential uses. Simon Properties has expressed some interest, the Great Mall owners, in potentially adding some residential uses to their space. And then we're thinking about density, because we're actually seeing denser projects, taller buildings that are coming into Milpitas Metro, and we want to really optimize the remaining space to make it feel like a vibrant and cohesive neighborhood. And you can kind of see, as you look between these 2 maps, the areas that we're planning on changing the allowable land use in. They're all outlined in these black dashes. The biggest one is the Great Mall area, where we are planning to allow some mixed use. So that means some residential as well as the commercial and retail uses that are there. We're actually thinking that closer to BART, we might just maintain a commercial use allowance, so that we really do have some space left over for office development, whether that is financially feasible in this year or 10 or 20 years from now. And in other areas, we're thinking about denser development than townhomes, so that we can increase affordable housing and really take advantage of the transit-oriented nature of this neighborhood. Next slide, please. Focusing specifically on the Great Mall, I talked a little bit about this, but we've had multiple conversations with Simon Properties. They, even before this timeline, they approached the city to ask about potentially developing a couple of properties up against the BART tracks, kind of near their large parking area. And the city said, well, we're going to do this plan, so let's kind of coordinate. And we have been keeping in touch with them as the pandemic has been ongoing. Their interest in taking a risk has been shifting, but in the long term, they're certainly interested in flexibility and in creating an evolved and viable economic use out of this land. The Great Mall itself is about 1.4 million square feet. It's a huge property. But interestingly, the parcels that are around it are mostly not owned by Simon Properties. We have a mix down in the south towards the BART station of hotels, the school, office building, and then the now vacant site that is owned by VTA, where they've expressed interest in fairly intense affordable housing. And they actually have a goal system-wide of having 30% affordable housing on all of their properties. So that might be something that they're interested in doing here. Next slide, please. The transit area specific plan that we are updating very lightly addressed the Great Mall. It was really a case of encouraging connections rather than changing the use of it. You can see that they actually didn't change the use and just left it as commercial. Next slide, please. But now we're thinking, how could this change? As Alex said in his presentation or talking points earlier, Milpitas has a lot of retail. And the nature of retail is changing, and Taifian will talk about a little bit more about this. But as people physically go to stores less and they're really looking for experiences over going through tons of racks, the footprint, so the total area of a retail store doesn't need to be quite as big as it has had to be historically. So the size of retail stores that they need to maintain the same level of income is shrinking. And we're also finding that destinations and experiences adjacent to stores really help those stores remain viable. And so we're looking at a live, work, play, hotel, dining kind of experience on the Great Mall.
And I just like to add that these are all Simon Properties examples, and we have been talking to them quite a bit this whole time. So they have been, we've been just making sure they know what we're up to, and so this is stuff that they can absolutely do.
Yes. So as we think about how the Great Mall will evolve, there are a variety of different ways that we can look at this. One way is just looking at parking lot changes on the parking lot only, maintaining the essential footprint, or potentially part of the footprint could redevelop if a couple of anchors wanted to trade over. Or it may be that over time, over 20 years or something like that, it could entirely redevelop. And so we are thinking about what the different options are and how we can allow flexibility while making sure that we maintain the retail tax, sales tax base as much as possible. Next slide, please. So what we're thinking about doing is diagrammed here. The yellow blocks are residential or housing. The blue box are commercial, R&D, and office. Purple is hotel, and then red is retail. What you'll see is that we're looking at combining uses, so making the optimum use of this space by, like in the yellow and red buildings on Great Mall Parkway, having retail on the ground floor and then housing above that so that you can get more uses into one parcel.
And I just also like to add that these are capacity tests that we modeled. These are, again, not proposals that you're looking at. We're trying to just like, with the 3 scenarios or partial scenarios, what would that actually mean? And so we did a little bit of modeling, which is what you're seeing here.
What was the dark blue?
The dark blue was office. Oops, sorry.
Or R&D.
Here we go. Sorry.
Right, because you said the red was retail.
Red is retail.
The dark
so like
blue
right at the bottom. And the dark blue at the bottom is any kind of mix of commercial. So it could be, different kinds of commercial.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're really looking at is to try to encourage development feasibility by allowing a little bit more flexibility than we have in the past. So, for example, in a retail space, we might allow some services or very public-facing offices, as well as stores and that kind of thing, to make sure that those spaces are full, because the last thing you want is empty storefronts on your new street or your new development.
Christina, I have a question, and it looks like a lot of great plans are being made in that area, and so many housing have been added. Have we looked at it, traffic congestion, how it is going to impact the traffic? Because before COVID situation, that Montague, St. Thomas corridor has always been impacted. With the addition of so many houses and so many commercial buildings, innovation center, that is going to impact the traffic and create a congestion. Have we looked at it, or that will be looked at some point in time?
Yes, great question. That is something that we are working on. We have a transportation consultant as part of our team. And one of the presentations that we gave to City Council about a month ago was about this specifically, and about how we're going to work on managing the transportation. Looking at the general plan, one of the directions the city has really chosen to go in is to focus on one of the ways to think about it is to improve public health, but also to relieve driving congestion by encouraging people to walk and bike. And you do that really by, having programs, but also making sure that the walking and biking facilities, the sidewalks and bike lanes are really nice and safe to use. So that's a major focus of this plan, is thinking about how can we really encourage people to use the transit that's in this neighborhood. How can they walk and bike? How can we make sure that the places that they want to go are fairly close to them, so that they don't necessarily need to go in a car? That's not to say that they can't drive, but we're going to work very hard on managing that. Transportation demand is one of the ways that we think about it, and we want to have programs that essentially would be called a transportation demand management program, that would ensure that developers are thinking about how to get people off of the street in their car, or encourage them not to feel like they need to drive all the time.
Alice, could you make sure that the commissioners have a link to that school board? That city council meeting where they did the presentation on the transportation piece?
Yes, certainly. certainly. And as we go along, we're
Thank you.
going to get more detailed on that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Follow-up question on that one. Earlier, I heard in your presentation, at least at present time, there are a lot of barriers to walking and bicycling. And I'm really delighted to hear you're addressing that issue, because if we want to encourage people not to drive, we have to provide an alternate medium, either walking to the job, if the job is close by to the shopping center, or bicycling. So I would like to know a little bit more about what is being done in that area. I think that will be very useful.
Sure. We didn't want to overwhelm you too much. I think we did about 3 hours with council. We didn't want to take this meeting that long, so we might need to give you some information outside of this and forward you the presentation. And then we can also send you some additional materials if we don't get to it in this session.
Thank you.
I have a couple of different questions. Earlier, you alluded to affordable housing. And I was wondering if your target audience is, when you say affordable, if you can define the type of individual that you're addressing the need for. And then also, in the past, if you look at history, Milpitas is, in the recent years, the population has only been growing by 2% a year, roughly. And San Jose has been growing at about 7%. So a couple of questions remain is, will Milpitas start growing at the 7% as well someday? And then you've got to address bigger needs, or will it still stay at 2%? So
I think those are great questions. Thank you for those.
Thank you.
Alex, do we have, I want to do a time check. Those are great questions. We want to do a time check and make sure that those questions are honored. We have the ability to answer those questions now, or do those have to come back?
I think between Ned, Kevin, and Jessica, they could probably address the who is that target audience for affordable housing. I think what Commissioner Mundra might be looking at is perhaps a salary range, income rather, annual home income.
Alex, so basically it's like who really needs and what is the the income level, but the affordability, what does it really mean? Thank you.
Would our planning team like to respond briefly?
I mean, I can certainly say something, and maybe
Okay, Christina.
you guys want to follow up. So, not to go way into the weeds, but the city is required to plan for affordable housing at particular income levels, and that starts with the median income. So if you're at 80% of median income, you're at one level of affordability, and we go from that level all the way down to very low income. So there are a number of income brackets that we need to fairly specifically plan for. This project in particular doesn't focus on which affordability brackets we're planning for, or who the folks are who make those kinds of salaries. But the city is in the process of getting ready to prepare its housing element, which will be completed in January of 2023, if not before, and that will very specifically plan for affordable housing and where it could go. And some of that will likely be in the Milpitas metro area. And so we're working to make sure that, for example, in the Great Mall, which is a large site, they could identify small portions of that site that are most likely to develop in the next 8 years, which is a housing element timeframe. So much more to come on that.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on that. Being a long-term resident of city of Milpitas, one of the greatest need that I have seen is that we have great schools over a period of time. My children, they went to schools in the city of Milpitas. There are a lot of great teachers who cannot afford housing. Has anything been looked into that, what we can do to retain the great teachers in the city of Milpitas? Because I know some teachers, they travel from Tracy and other places. In order to create a greater community, we have to have great schools. For great schools, we need to have great teachers. Has anything been done in that arena?
So I could talk to that point because I am connected to the school district. So I'll schedule time with you to review what the school district's plan is. And I will also add, affordable housing or workforce housing, the housing has a number of different definitions depending on who's funding it. Santa Clara County has a specific criteria when they're funding housing versus the city itself saying that it's going to develop affordable housing, and then it defines the criteria through city council. So it depends on who owns the land on the housing piece. And even if the county does, you do have the ability to have some say in the process. But I'm not going to steal anybody else's job on that. We're just going to keep going with the team and let them lead the discussion.
Thank you, Chair.
If I could add one thing through the chair.
Absolutely, Ned. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Christina was explaining what's known as the regional housing needs assessment that comes from the state to every city in California. That's what we're planning toward through in each cycle. There's an 7 or 8 year cycle. I always forget.
8.
8, yeah, 8-year cycle. So our current cycle is ending next year, and so we will be doing the next cycle and updating our housing element. But what I wanted to stress is that each year the city is required to submit an annual housing report to the State Department of Community Development, and we will. I know there's a draft that's circulating now by the staff in the housing department, and that will be presented to the council within the next few meetings. While we're talking, I'll look it up and see what day that will be on. I believe it's in April sometime, or I can send that to Alex and he can forward that on. That annual progress report for housing provides an overview of where we are in meeting our current RENA, as a regional housing needs assessment, the RENA numbers for the current cycle. And that will answer a lot of the questions that you have.
Thanks, Ned.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
Alex, time check. Alex, time check.
I was on mute there. Yeah, thank you for that. We need to keep moving. There's a lot of information that's coming your way. It's wonderful. So if we can just allow Jane and Christina to go through it, it'll allow us for a better dialogue afterwards.
Okay. We do love to talk about all of these things, but we want to let you have dinner at some point. So just as Jane was saying, what we've been doing is we've been looking kind of conceptually what could potentially happen here, but not necessarily planning for the future of these areas. Of course, this is owned by Simon Properties, and they have a great deal of say over what they want to do with their space. But looking conceptually at what could potentially fit at the Great Mall, we could keep half of the Great Mall, as this says 1.4 million square feet of retail in the plan. We could also then add around 3,000 housing units. There's in fact space for more than that. This would not only create a mix of uses on the Great Mall site, but also increase the customer base for the local retail. We could potentially add or redevelop one of the hotels that are in the district. This model shows 500 square feet of commercial office. This could also potentially be R&D just adjacent to the BART station. And then additional ground floor retail that is coming along Great Mall Parkway, which we're really looking to be a signature street, as Jane was describing earlier. And this allows retail to adapt and integrate a little bit more with the neighborhood to provide more neighborhood serving retail rather than really focusing on that regional retail in the Great Mall.
Okay, so keep your eye on this asterisk. I'm going to show you an image of what it is like right there at McCandless and Great Mall Parkway. And that's this rendering. It's not there right now, but it's the idea of what could happen here in transforming it. You can really see the Great Mall in the background, but they could have their presence come all the way to the front and along Great Mall Parkway closer to the street as well. So this is just one of the, again, dreamy ideas of what could be here. And then we also have the Innovation District. So, Christina.
Thank you. Okay, so thinking about the Innovation District, this idea has been in the works for quite a while, and especially that is the area where public storage is and so on, just adjacent to the highway. So what we're planning on doing over there really springs from the general plan, which is just coming complete now, and we're looking at fairly intense development and wanting to tie that into the BART station, so making a direct connection to BART. And then trying to pull that commercial in towards the transit center as well. This is looking down towards, from the highway towards the BART station. So there's a new street going across the creek there. We want to be close to the amenities, close to new housing, close to BART, and you can have quite a bit of office space here. This model is showing 2.5 million square feet of office and R&D. I want to be clear that it's not necessarily only office. Here again, you could have some hotel, and you also have really great connections to the freeway. We want to make this a really livable place. So you're not just looking at a warehouse in a parking lot, but you're looking at somewhere where folks are going to want to get around, to walk around, because this is something that's really important to attract those knowledge workers and those tech workers.
And then later on, we'll show you an image of what it's like to stand on an upper floor in this building. So keep your eye on that. But first, we're going to kind of look at this area here. And there is, we've been talking to VTA. We've been talking to BART. It's really a VTA station right here. And they have we've been talking about what they could potentially do, and they've been putting out RFPs for partnering with developers to build here. And what they primarily are thinking of is housing, and again, with that high affordable housing goal that they have, 35% or something like that. And that would also mean, that I think this area also means that we can also consider all the things that go with that, and things that are near BART and the Innovation District as well. So this is that image of being on an upper floor looking down the street, and on the horizon is the BART station. It's that close. So this is the kind of, this is again like one vision out of many, but one where you can really imagine the commercial land uses transforming in that transit close location. It's quite amazing. And I think I'll just continue, but there are many kinds of formats that can happen here. Of course, like what I just showed you could be kind of like a business park, but actually there's other formats that can fit within it. We are thinking about vertical commercial mixes, and we're also thinking about horizontal, so like a big piece of land. So there's different things that are happening, right? A mix of different kinds of commercial uses altogether. Of course, we're also thinking of incubator and accelerator spaces, maker spaces, co-working, flex spaces. We're trying to anticipate, and of course, that we know there's a variety of different kinds of employment formats coming our way. So that's what's going on with this. And so I think we're going to walk through this is really quick. You've seen this model, but some of the different land uses and their capacity. And so this just kind of shows where the housing is as it's spread out across our plan area. This looks at the office, and we're really primarily talking about most of it being in the Innovation District, but thinking about some of it being in the Great Mall area.
Yeah, and Jane, can I just add really quick? We're looking at these models and seeing the blue office and R&D and the yellow residential and the red retail. There's some flexibility here. So for example, the VTA sites just adjacent to BART that Jane was talking about will have a mixed use designation. So if it comes to pass that there's more demand to build office there, that would be a possibility.
Right. And then, yes, exactly. So also with the retail and hotel, this is all in support of this whole mixed use neighborhood and the employment uses that go there. So there's day and night use, and it's spread out so that it serves a lot of different sub-districts. This is just a summary of the development capacity that we are imagining, and we're kind of counted up what we just showed you, and it's turning out to be something like 7,000 units, about 3 million square feet of office, and 300,000 square feet of retail, and 700 rooms. That's more like 2 hotels, something like that, that we are planning to put in our specific plan as far as like what people are allowed to do. So what they can do is all market driven, but what they're allowed to do is something that we're putting in here, and we're hoping this is a reasonable limit for this next planning period.
Jan, MMSP?
MMSP, Milpitas Metro Specific Plan.
Yeah, everybody knew that. Sorry about that. That was totally my mistake.
That's okay. You know, we've been talking about Metro. So, but that's our other nickname, MMSP.
Thank you.
All right. So next up is Typhian, who will he'll give us a quick market overview.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. Good evening, everybody. I know where time is ticking, so I'll try to go quickly here. But one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that the plan is infused with a sense of kind of market reality and market possibility at the same time. As has been mentioned before, for a range of reasons, the commercial development we're hoping for in the TASP did not materialize to date. That doesn't mean it can't in the future. But clearly we need to think carefully about how to make that happen and what kind of commercial opportunities we can attract. Some of the big questions that we've been posing, obviously some of them are not, obviously answerable, and COVID has made created some interesting challenges for how we think about things and how things may change. But we've been thinking about where the future jobs can be located in the plan area, as Jane and Christina have spoken about. What is the format? What does it look like in terms of the different types of real estate? Are we talking about Class A office buildings? Are we talking about industrial flex space? Are we talking about mixed uses? Obviously, the future of retail and regional retail matters. We have the Great Mall there. We're also trying to infuse the whole area with additional retail where possible, but there are limits to how much retail you can build. The future of commercial spaces. What does office look like as we come out of the COVID pandemic? And of course, there's this broader question that I think is being posed earlier on by Alex and Daniel, and was also, I think, being infused as a policy into parts of this plan, which is that given the general strength of the residential market, it's important that we make sure there are places for employment lands and employment growth. Next slide, please. Here's just a little overview. The main point of this is, you have a lot, as Alex said, a lot of jobs. You've got a lot of workspace spread in certain areas in the city of Milpitas. At this point to date, while you do have some office, the Class A office that we associate with kind of new tech buildings, very little at this point. And so one of the questions we were kind of grappling with was, what does it take? It's not just the economic development strategy and think of vision is not just to have Class A office buildings, but that was one of the questions on the table, recognizing also we have a large base of other very important R&D and manufacturing uses. Next slide, please. So one of the things that, one of the trends we've been tracking, and I know Alex and Daniel have been tracking this as well, is that we've really seen changes. If you go back 20, 30, 40 years, we have seen a geographic evolution, dispersion of kind of Class A office buildings throughout Silicon Valley. A lot of it started around Stanford and Palo Alto, and increasingly we're seeing more and more development in Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and recently in North San Jose, which is very close to Milpitas here. We do think the prospects for Milpitas and hence the metro area are definitely positive. Time will tell. We obviously don't have, or well, maybe Alex might correct me on this, but we don't have lots of tech developers knocking our doors at this moment in time. But we do know that over time they may come. But it's important to think about the things they'll want. They'll want large sites. They'll want attractive locations, and they'll need to be able to they'll need to attract interested tenants. Next slide. Thank you, Jane. This is just a quick snapshot just to show you, how predominant Class A office development has become in many places. Sunnyvale, for example, that's, it's gone from having very little to quite a lot in a relatively short amount of time. So there are real possibilities, again, especially now we have the BART station in Milpitas, to attract in the future this kind of office space. Next slide, please. Here's just one example in North San Jose of a kind of Class A office building, not too far away. Next slide, please. We're also seeing in places like Fremont, which historically has not been able to attract a lot of Class A office development. This is a conceptual plan, but since they got the Warm Springs BART station, they've attracted more interest in the kind of office R&D development that I think we're talking about, in part for the Innovation District and for the metro area. Next slide, please. And then just to dig a little bit further into some of the workspace trends we're seeing and the prospects for the metro area. I think one of the things we're seeing a lot of, and this has been happening since the 1960s, and large changes in the manufacturing base and the industrial base. We're seeing a lot of transformation of formerly industrial areas into these new mixes, these vital mixes of employment opportunities, some of which mix residential in, but many of which have a combination of R&D, production, research, and retail. And I think this kind of segues a lot with what Alex and Daniel have identified in their work and the economic development strategy that the city put out as identified in terms of there are particular niches and particular opportunities, both for office, but also for advanced manufacturing and the research prototyping and other kinds of uses that were mentioned. We also, but in addition to some of the larger uses attracting the larger businesses who may come in and be interested in Milpitas, I think that there are also opportunities when we look elsewhere at the kinds of trends we're seeing for industrial buildings to be reused as more creative, open floor plan spaces. I think I'm being paced here, which is good. I'm going on too long. This slide. So some of the things that we want to, that are going to be important are going to be about the building stock and the reuse of the building stock. I think a key point we want to make is that by creating an attractive place, by doing this plan, creating an attractive place, we think we'll also create an attractive environment for new businesses to come. Silicon Valley is obviously a massive innovation industry and center, and there's a lot of need and spin-off needs for different kinds of space that we think we could capture here in Milpitas. Next slide, please. Here's a few examples. I don't think we have to go into these, but quickly, there's just examples of co-working space. I think other people mentioned incubation space. This is in the city of Berkeley. Next slide, please. We have, this is a kind of, the former one was a kind of, up from the ground built live work space. This one is a kind of adaptation of industrial building with lots of small creative offices and uses. The next slide is part of a large mixed-use development in downtown Oakland where there's co-working space. So a lot of opportunities to kind of infuse what we hope will be some larger businesses with some smaller opportunities to kind of cluster different kinds of uses and spaces. Adaptation of R&D buildings is something else that perhaps we can think about if we have the right building stock in place. Next slide, please. So a few thoughts for the future, some of which have already been mentioned. BART station development is going to be as Alex said, a game changer. We think this whole plan and the investments we're hoping for in infrastructure, even expanding the number of residential units, retail, will create a vibrancy that will be attractive to the kind of 21st century workspace. And as I mentioned before, I think we have a diminishing number of locations that are next to BART, offer these kinds of amenities. So we've got a real opportunity again as we make this plan to kind of help Milpitas move further to where I think it wants to go. Next slide, please. And then finally, we do want to recognize there's some challenges. The process of redeveloping land, you often have existing landowners, it's their property, it's their choice. So inevitably sometimes they're not ready to sell, sometimes change isn't the right time. We do have some existing low cost spaces that are playing a particular role, so that they may not all turn over. And then this is true for all places, especially in California, in the Bay Area. The cost of development have really been going up and are quite challenging in many ways. So for new development to occur, there has to be the right kind of math, the right kind of business economics for these things to work. And inevitably there'll be cycles and changes. And sometimes we just have to kind of wait through them, we plan through them, and we wait for the next surge with the idea of with the right policies in place, which is a big part of what this plan is working on, to encourage the kind of uses we want. So when the market comes back, we're ready to capture them. And of course, COVID has created its own set of issues. And next slide, or perhaps that was my last one.
Yeah, thank you, Typhoon. So we're coming to the part where we stop talking and we want to hear from you. And we thought, if you'd like to talk about any of these questions or had any thoughts on these, we thought we'd throw out some discussion questions. But of course, we invite any of the questions that you've been jotting down, or if they've just come up, so we can talk about pretty much anything. But the questions we thought we might raise to you is, what is the importance of having job creation as a key goal in our plan? We'd love to know what you think about that. Also, what could or should be the foundational elements of an innovation district? And what can you see as challenges and possibilities for the future of Great Mall? So with that, we'll stop talking and we'd love to hear what you think.
Well, first of all, I'd like to... Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Jen, I'd like to thank you and your team for the thoughtful presentation and the detail and the patience that you took on doing that. I would probably say that as far as these three discussion questions, one or more of us may already incorporate it in what we're thinking, but I wouldn't want all of us to kind of all focus on these three things and just ask different forms of that same question. So I just want to be thoughtful of everyone's thoughts that way and allow them to consider what they've been thinking about, because you've asked us to absorb a lot. And then we'll weave your questions into some of our answers or some of our input. Thank you. Indra?
I have a couple of things. Regarding the innovation district, I see that there was no mention of involving MUSD because there should be some innovation programs that this high school should get involved with and so on. That's very critical to the future of the area. And then there's this, for number one, for this job creation goal, there's a chicken and egg story. Do you have to raise the density of living to influence that, or is it you've got to do something else, with some magic dust to create jobs? One thing is more practical than the other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from any other commissioners?
I have a comment. Oops.
Go ahead, Juliet. Go ahead.
So I guess one question comes up. Has there been any thought into shuttle service from any of the transit points to some of the companies that might be coming into Milpitas? And also, I kind of have a concern about maybe overpopulation or congestion in and around those key areas?
They're both great questions. Kevin, Riley, are you able to answer the first one about shuttles and maybe talk a little bit about the first last mile grant that you, yeah, okay.
Sure, yeah, we were just approved for a grant from BTA for first mile, last mile connections. So it's kind of a hub and spoke model where we would try to get service, and we're going through the details of what that is. We've been approved by VTA, but we need to put the program together. But it would be a hub and spoke service that would shuttle people to and from the various transit stations, whether it's the light rail or the new transit center for BART, as well as City Hall area. And so what you would do is, just like you do for Uber, you'd be able to call up, get service from a small, minivan size thing that might be efficient in picking up several people who are going the same place or on their way. And you could move them along that way without them having to jump on a car. And it could serve the whole of the city. And again, this is a pilot program for BTA, and hopefully at the end of this, we go through a year and a half or so of this project, and then BTA would ideally pick it up or find a way to create a new service model that would do that, not just for Milpitas, but all around the BTA service area to get people to and from the transit centers. So this, rather than being just an Uber where you can go anywhere you want by paying whatever they charge you, this would be kind of focused on getting people to and from the transit stations.
Would there be a partnering with any of the businesses in the area?
Well, ideally, you would want that to happen because you really want this service, and the service is for anyone. But what you really want to do is have some of those guys, you look at some of the businesses we have over on the other side of the 880 from the metro area, and, many of them could have people who would be interested in getting, off of BART in the morning, getting to work, and then leaving work and getting back to BART. And, those could be great connections between businesses and the service. So yeah, I think those will really be something that we will work to try to, create relationships over time, as well as, again, to anybody living in a single family home or apartment anywhere within the city of Milpitas.
Yeah, I think the partnering would definitely be key. Now, in and around the Great Mall area, is there a consideration of bringing in those electric scooters?
Yeah, we did have a conversation with BTA about that. And, there's a lot to be figured out with those because while they do have a lot of benefits, they also have a lot of problems.
I agree.
But, it is something that's certainly on the front burner, in terms of where our traffic engineering group is going and looking at the bicycle plan, the overall micro-mobility issues. So it's just another form of getting around, and it is certainly, on the plate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Crush, you had some questions?
Yeah, one comment that I have is after this COVID situation, at least the circular move in the business community, there's a strong sense that probably even though employment may increase, but the need for the commercial real estate may not be there because companies that, including our company, we have come to realization this hybrid model, working part-time from the office and part-time from home, may be here to stay for a longer period of time. So I would bring to the attention of our consultant that please take that thing into consideration, that office utilization may not increase, may even be decreased over a period of time. A lot of high-tech companies, they have already made a decision for the people to continue to work from home for the foreseeable future. Even an engineering company like ours, we found ways to have a hybrid model because we have some people traveling from other areas come to Milpitas because of traffic and whatnot. We have accepted the fact that we don't need all the people all the time in the office. So this may have an impact, lasting impact on the office utilization. So I would request the consultant to take that thing into consideration and make the adjustment to the plan accordingly so we don't get caught flat-footed, that we plan for bigger office expansions and the demand may not be there. Current forecast, what I see is probably this situation of hybrid model is going to continue for next 3 to 4 years at least, until you figure out what is a better way of doing it. So it's just a comment and suggestion.
Thank you, Prakash. And I'd like to follow up on that comment in a couple of ways. The first way is that there is definitely going to be a change in economic opportunity in this region because of what COVID has done in terms of retail and industrial, commercial space available, which is interesting, very different from the housing market. Housing market is going crazy. You know, everybody's trying to buy houses. But that's not necessarily, folks aren't looking to buy new businesses or new buildings because they're just waiting for everything to kind of shake out and see what it's going to look like before they decide where they're doing. So it sounds like the Economic Development and Trade Commission has its work cut out for it in terms of marketing Milpitas as a viable destination for an organization's next significant investment based on the transit, the Milpitas metro area as a marketing tool. The other thing is that I'm concerned, deeply concerned. I'm sure all of you guys have been up and down Old Main Street. Have you guys all been up and down Old Main Street?
Uh-huh.
So Old Main Street is the weirdest street when it comes to the mixed uses of all these different types of buildings. You know, you have fast food, you have a lot of different things on that street. And the reason why was because of what you guys have been presenting today. That's a lot of flexibility, a lot of opportunity, a lot of different types of businesses. And over time, different types of businesses were allowed to go there because the area was zoned as such. So there's something to be thought through in terms of, is there going to be uniformity in the buildings? Are there going to be minimum, maximum numbers of certain types of businesses? And will there be preferred developers in terms of designing out the area? Because if you go back through the deck that you guys showed like 85 different designs of buildings. And having 85 different designs of buildings down there is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate all the flexibility that you guys have told us about, but that flexibility also creates, I didn't hear the uniformity piece on it. So I would just ask that at some point they're saying this flexibility all fits within this framework so that we have uniformity in this area. And certain types of organizations, that would be critical. Otherwise, it would look 20 years from now, because there'll be different city councils, there'll be different organizations, there'll be different folks looking for opportunity. Everyone will say, this doesn't make any sense.
I can make a brief comment if you'd like.
Always, come on, Ned, we've been here before.
So, so tonight's presentation on the Metro Plan covers the area that was shown, and then coming right on the heels of the Metro Plan is an update to what's known as the Midtown Plan, which includes Main Street and the Calaveras corridor west of the bridge. So you're right on track, Chair Norwood, because we hope to do the same thing for the Main Street area and along Calaveras and a couple of other places, similar to what we're doing with updating the task into the Metro Plan. So we hope to circulate the RFP. Actually, it'll go out next week or in 2 weeks, and then we hope to kick off that project in July. Now, in the meantime, the council has also asked us to take a closer look at Main Street. So we're currently planning some initial public engagement work specifically on Main Street. There'll be 3 community conversations, one on housing, one on business revitalization, and one on historic resources. So we're coordinating with Alex, obviously, on the business revitalization piece of that. And as soon as we have a few more details and a little further along, we definitely want to engage members of this commission in that conversation and all of the conversations, if you're interested in all 3. They will occur I think we've settled on dates. It'll be the 4th Thursday of each month. April, May, and June, we'll be doing those conversations. So stay tuned and watch for more on that note. But yeah, we're right there with you on needing to do something along Main Street to improve the look and the feel and the sense of place there.
Yeah, I agree with Chris that optically it has to be, somewhat inviting.
Yeah, it's I guess the best we can say about it is very eclectic along Main Street. Now you've got older uses and newer uses and all kinds of different design, but we would like to, one of the goals, I think, of updating that plan, and of course, the plan is just the policy work, and we can't necessarily want to attract the developers to Main Street, but we can't necessarily force them to come. I will say, though, that we do have several property owners along Main Street that are interested in redeveloping their properties, and we're actively working with them on pre-applications and kind of kicking the tires, if you will, on types of new development that would work down there. But unfortunately, the work, because it's not a greenfield site, it's infill development. It does happen a little bit piecemeal, and that's very unfortunate because it results in what you see down there now. But we're hoping that over time, as more development and more incentives are offered down there, that new development can occur.
We have a follow-up question on that on the Main Street. One other thing lately I've seen that looked like some permits have been issued for a residential kind of apartment complex or condos. How does that fit in the grand scheme of things that you're planning for that area? Because Main Street itself is very narrow street. There's only so much you can do from engineering point of view. But if these permits are granted, are they part of the grand scheme of things, or is one of a kind permit that has been given to the landowners?
Very, very good question. Ideally, any project that comes forward would be, well, one of the main things we check for is that it's consistent with the plan. So I think the current Midtown plan has been, for a variety of reasons, been somewhat effective, somewhat ineffective in achieving that goal. But usually you have a vision for what you want to have happen in a specific, this is why we're using a specific plan process to bring some coherence to the development that occurs there. And the specific plan allows us not only to look at land use, but also the transportation connections, economic development, all of the things that we talked about tonight. Those same principles would apply along Main Street and other areas. So just an overall urban design strategy for that area. And yeah, but as we're preparing the plan, we do have property owners that are coming forward with ideas or proposals for development. And certainly as a private property owner, they're able to propose whatever they would like on their property. Then we check for consistency. I'll give one quick example. There's one area of Main Street where there was a veterinary hospital next to the car wash, and both of those properties have recently come forward with proposals for redevelopment. One was approved, another one is going to be heard at the Planning Commission this week. So those are happening side by side, and we do our best to try to get them to be compatible with one another as far as setbacks and the look of the building. But to be honest, the existing Midtown plan doesn't give us a lot of teeth when we're trying to impose some type of a design strategy, for example. But it does give us more than an area that's not within a specific plan. So yeah, those are definitely all the issues that we'll be looking at with the updated plan. So we'll kick it off in July. We would hope to have a draft by December or early next year, and then have something adopted by this time next year. And I will add, we had started updating the plan. It was underway when I joined the city 2.5 years ago, but for a variety of reasons, it got set aside while we were completing the work on the general plan and completing work on this metro plan. So now that both of those are well along the way, we're able to pick it back up again and bring on a consultant to help us with that plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions by commissioners? If not, we will, or Lynn, if you're still here. If not, we will check with public comments.
There's no there is one public comment for Barbara Jo Navarro.
BJ, are you there?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I've been following this plan for some time now, and I think it will be a great add to our city of Milpitas. I do want to make sure that they make it more walkable and bikeable, and I have heard that the city is considering those scooters and other electric bikes and things in that area. I liked Chris's comment about uniformity and making sure that things don't look uniquely different, that there's some kind of theme throughout the area. I've also reviewed the first artwork that the city was planning to pick an artist for the overpass across Montague, the existing one. And I hope that all of you will take a look at that survey and make your comments as well. I believe this will be a real boost for the city down in that area. I am concerned about traffic as well, and hoping the city will promote using mass transit. Now that everybody's getting vaccinated, maybe we'll even start using that BART station. So thank you all for the improvements that will be made in our city. I'm really looking forward to seeing it completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Chair Norwood, that is the only public comment we have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional comments from the commissioners?
Chair Norwood, if I may, we are interested in learning thoughts about the Innovation District or future workforce around Great Mall or the Innovation District. This would be helpful. Remember, your role today is to act as an advisory body to City Council. Eventually, this information will be shared with our City Council, and I believe perhaps there will be a meeting with the Plan Commission as well. So this is your time to please share your thoughts.
Absolutely. Kind of allow folks to regroup and listen to what they've heard, and be able to continue commenting on that, because there's a couple of different phases to this presentation that we've seen. And the majority of our questions have been around some of the uniformity, a little bit about the job, not really much about the Innovation District itself. And how does that actually come to fruition? Prakash did have a comment earlier about the fact that the workforce, the economic development team really is going to have his plan cut out for him. But Alex, just to talk off topic for just a second, I think that plan that Ned was referring to, in terms of where the teeth is, about who can be there, how many of each is going to be there, is what we would be looking to see.
As it relates to the Innovation District?
As it relates to it all.
Throughout the Milpitas
Yeah.
Metro specific plan?
Yeah, each of the different areas. So if you bring up the diagram, someone could bring up the diagram that shows Piper and all that stuff. Can someone bring that up?
I'm getting there. Hold on.
No worries.
Sorry. Okay, almost
okay.
there. There we are.
Right. So each of those represents a different potential design area or different criteria, if I'm not mistaken. Like Piper has is those homes over there, right?
Yes.
Right. So that's a residential area, and there's a specific requirement for that specific residential area. We're not aware of the specific requirements for the Innovation District. I mean, you guys talked about there's a lot of different things, nor the Great Mall area or McCandless or Tango. But seeing uniformity, I appreciate how each of the areas are color-coded, because it tells me that there is going to be some consistency, if I'm not mistaken.
Can I just jump in? I feel like this might really clarify. So the city is in the process of developing objective design standards for development for residential specifically across the city. So we're going to look at that and how that could apply within our plan area. A lot of the development that we're suggesting would be multifamily with residential. So those objective design standards could apply to those projects. And then we're also going to be thinking about whether or not we need to develop separate, urban objective design standards for all of the work, whether or not there are sort of a lot of legal requirements for when projects have to comply with objective design standards. But we're going to be looking at whether or not we should require them for any project. That could be residential, that could be commercial, R&D, et cetera. So that's something that's certainly what we're going to look at.
Thank you for that. That's an interesting combination, because how do you, if a company wants to come there and they have an idea of what they want, you have to decide whether or not the objective design standard would apply if it existed.
Well, for a company specifically, we have some options. So Milpitas already has some objective design standards like setbacks, how far you have to be from the street, how far you have to be from other properties, how tall the building is. All of those have to do with the design of the building. So objective design standards can be both, from very broad to very specific. We could go down to like, your building must be silver, which we won't do. But so the idea is, how can we create some feeling of cohesion, not necessarily uniformity, but feeling of it being a shared district that has a sense of place and sense of design, while allowing for creativity and whatever the particular project's needs are. For housing, it's a slightly different case, because in some cases the city is required to process a project using objective design standards. In some cases not. It has to do with affordability levels and the application process. But we do try to, just as you're saying, create some sense of high quality design and neighborhood while allowing that flexibility.
Thank you.
So if I may as well, and just kind of echoing what Alex had said. So what we really need, so there's the objective design standards, those are all numbers, but there's like a subjective quality of this area that we all want to see. And it's defined by the electeds and like the people who vote on the plan, so in a way we're asking for some feedback about what you think might be really good for this area. And we showed a bunch of different ideas about different kinds of employment formats. And for this presentation, we really did focus on the commercial part, like places where employment could occur. So we'd love to know if any of those ideas about R&D spaces or flex spaces or the types of office spaces that we're showing were ones that you could really see here, and if you would recommend them as part of the plan. And we'd love to know that.
Thank you for that question. And my first thought is BART and malls. And I think about Bayfair, what Bayfair used to be in that area, and what Bayfair is today, which isn't close to what it used to be in its heyday. So it has the mixed use, the residential, a variety of eating areas, very vibrant. 237 is relatively close by, or 238 is close by, in terms of where you have a throughway that's not owned by the local area. And it does create some challenges. So have you guys looked at those models across the country and seen what's being most successful, and that's what you're proposing in terms of, or is this more regionally based on, as you showed at the beginning of the presentation, advanced manufacturing as one of the components, as well as the anchors that we have in the area?
So anybody can jump in, but I think what would be helpful to set a framework around is the level of detail that we're getting into in this plan. So we are planning land uses, and heights, and how many residential units you can have, how many square feet of office or R&D you can have, what are some basic premises or basic requirements for design. We're not specifically, for example, designing the Great Mall and how that could evolve. We are setting a framework for its evolution, and then it's going to be up to Simon Properties and the city to figure out how that is really going to play out. So we're not specifically looking at, in other areas like in the Innovation District, what individual property owners might do. So much in this plan, we're really setting up the framework for play, if that makes sense. And it's very possible that the Great Mall.
And I would just go ahead. This is Lynn from the Great Mall. So I work for Simon, so I just wanted to jump in. I think what you guys are providing is more kind of aspirational, based on an overall strategy for the area and where you would like it to go. Obviously, when this plan was put together, it was before COVID and, a lot of other variables. So I think that we have to look at the plan as something that, is going to evolve. And I think it has to be nimble based on market conditions and, even demographics and growth within the city in that area. So I don't think you can look at it literally. I think you just have to look at it as kind of an overall vision that can evolve based on, again, market conditions and things that are going on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lynn, or Commissioner. And it may well be that when it comes down to it, Simon Properties and the city will sit down and kind of have a conversation about what will really work here within the context of the plan, but there's some flexibility even so.
If I may, Chair Norwood?
Yes.
I recognize that in terms of the Innovation District, there might be some challenges. Typhoon mentioned various things related to the market, and we haven't historically been a destination for Class A office. Commissioner Dairani mentioned the work from home environment that we're engaged in now and how it's going to affect office usage. So there's many variables and challenges that we're going to be facing. I think from a staff perspective, specifically from an economic development perspective, going back to the previous conversation and presentation, we're trying to find out whether the commission is interested in preserving employment lands for the future. That's a real key for us in economic development and for job growth. We tie it into the city's fiscal health of the future. So it would just be helpful if there's interested in talking about preservation of employment lands. As Commissioner Rice was talking about, this is in some ways aspirational. We do have some boundaries. As Christina was indicating, we're not designing, we're not getting to that level, but any guidance you can provide us would be helpful. If not, then that's fine as well.
To comment on that, in order for any city to be vibrant and successful, you have to allocate certain portion of the land for employment. If you don't, then we started out with a comment that we have 28% of the land dedicated for employment, only 12% of the population they work in the city. That is stick to my mind. I think for city to flourish, we need to create meaningful jobs within the city so the local resident, they can get gainful employment within the city. So it's a delicate balance between how much land you allocate, but giving up employment land is not a solution. We need to look at it very carefully, that what we can do to preserve the employment land, what we can do to create employment, well-paid employment, so that we can attract and retain our population within the city.
Thank you for that, because that brings up, I guess we would probably be interested in what is the healthy employment, what's a good employment land ratio in terms of city? Because you guys said it's 28%. What could it be? What does it have the potential to be, or should it be for Milpitas overall? Because you guys have shared with us before, when we do housing, there's only a certain type of revenue. Hotel provides a certain type of revenue, and then other industries provide different certain types of revenue. So when you talk about what we want to see there, we would want to see the employment that aligns with this region. Because I remember once upon a time, Santa Clara and Mountain View weren't what they are today. Somehow they got there, and they were, I think Milpitas and Mountain View were pretty much neck and neck for a while. And then a couple of things happened in that community that put them in a different stratosphere, as well as Mountain as well.
I think one of the suggestions I would have is we do the benchmarking, following up on Chair's comment, that where the Mountain View was, say, 10 years ago, where it is today. It'd be good to do some benchmarking. The city, like city of Milpitas, with X number of population, comparable cities, how much land they were allocated for employment. I think that'd be a good yardstick for us to have the data that will help us make the informed decisions.
I agree. And I think we also have to consider what's going to invite people to want to stroll Milpitas. And I think preserving some land for businesses, given with the epidemic, a lot of the corporations are working from home primarily. And it seems to be working for a lot of the different companies out there, specifically for the one that I work for. So at this point, there's not a huge rush to go back to the office. So we have to consider, is manufacturing going to be one of those pieces that we want to preserve? Because that's going to bring in jobs where people have to go into the office or into the plant or whatnot.
I agree with what was just mentioned. If we're just focused on manufacturing, is that the only industry we can look at? are there any other industry segments
Mhm.
which we can address differently and they meet the financial model? Does that make sense?
I would still recommend if we do some benchmarking because COVID has kind of stirred the pot. We really don't know what the new steady state position is going to be. Everybody's thinking right now more like a hybrid model. But if you just focus on just manufacturing, you're going to miss out on the other opportunities. So we have to have a mixed use of manufacturing, R&D, and kind of high-paying jobs that can create revenue and good living for the people.
Well,
So,
let me just add to that. So for example, we're right here in the middle of the Bay Area, and we, in better times, we will have a lot of meetings going on, and TOT will increase considerably. And so that's a huge industry we could address, because in the past, when I've had guests come in from other countries or other companies around the country, I've had to go as far as San Francisco to find a hotel. So that's something that maybe we need to address, where with all the other manufacturing facilities around, that you address their need for the visitors to stay at some place. And that could be pretty huge. So that's just an example of other things that we could look at. Thank you.
Good point.
Thank you, Indrajit. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
I also wanted to just bring up, so a couple of things, and along the same lines we were discussing, is that a lot of times when you have an innovation district, there's some flagship, whether or not it's a satellite of one of the companies here, one of the big companies. But if those huge R&D companies, the ones that really need to be the foundation or that flagship of the innovation district, are not expanding, then that may be challenges, because a lot of times there's that nucleus and then the others build around that. And so it's important, in my opinion, to have that type of flagship. Also along the lines of what Commissioner Mundra mentioned much earlier, is that I think it would be helpful to have some sort of education feeder around that innovation district, whether or not it's part of the MUSD or some satellite of a campus, college campus, or something that's able to also be a part of that innovation district. And so those are some of the ideas that I had as far as the innovation district. And then getting to some of the other things, maybe Great Mall or others, but there's not a lot of east-west roads throughout the city for obvious reasons, because you can't go across the expressway is very easy and be very expensive. But I think that's something that, that's really, we need to look at, maybe locally for inside the city. Are there better ways that we can have something that's more of an east-west traffic viaduct for the city without causing a lot more expenses? So that's just some feedback that I have.
Thanks, Casey. I think it's not on the diagram anymore, but I think the southwest part of the plan has that east-west that you're referring to. Excuse me, are there any other comments from the board at this point? And team, do you have enough information, or would you like us to be more specific around either McCandless or Tango area?
So we didn't present very much on Tango and McCandless because most of them will not include employment lands. They're both quite built out, and residential is what is expected in those areas. But we absolutely do expect to see office and commercial uses of many different kinds in Great Mall and Innovation District. And Piper, again, is mainly built out as well. So it's really these two sub-districts that have the most potential, and they're very close to BART.
Thank you. So I appreciate the commissioners talking about an anchor in the Innovation District. And obviously there's a number of different strategies around the retail, mixed-use retail, in terms of how those things go on. We do have a Trader Joe's in that area, and I think there's something else over there as well. So those are fairly attractive in terms of where you see a Trader Joe's, other folks tend to show up as well, especially if the Trader Joe's is doing well. So I think that is definitely heading in the right direction.
And so, Chair Norwood, I'd also like to just comment related to an anchor and the comment about education. It is true that a research institution is generally part of successful labs, innovation districts. They can go by different names. We have had conversations in the last couple of weeks with representatives from the Department of Innovation from the San Jose State University. So we are very much in agreement with those statements.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If that is all that the commission is sharing today, that's fine. We can move on.
Excellent. Thank you. With that said, there's a recommendation for this presentation to be accepted. Is there a motion? We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Nicole.
Chair Wright, or Chair Norwood?
Yeah, here. Yep, here. Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil?
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra?
Yes.
Commissioner Aswafi?
Yes.
Commissioner Dariani?
Yes.
And Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Okay. So the presentation has been received.
And Commissioner Rice as well.
Commissioner Rice.
Oh, I believe she.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. If I could see the agenda, that'd be great. And for future reference, I'll print it out. So I just have one handy right next to me.
While we're doing that, I just want to say thanks to Jane, Christina, Typhion, Ned, Kevin, and Jessica. Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
It was fantastic. And guys, you guys put a lot of work into that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, we appreciate that. And so the takeaway, Alex, is you're going to get us that other information, those pieces that already exist for some of the questions that were asked for the commission. And we'll see a summary of this. Thank you again for the opportunity and the thorough presentation. The bar is really high. I like it here. So at this point, we will adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn next meeting, Monday, April 12th, 2021 from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m.? Is there a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
Juliet.
Ladies, International Women's Day. She made the first motion. We'll get somebody a second. Okay. Nicole.
Chair Norwood?
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil?
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra?
Yes.
Commissioner Aswafi? Commissioner Aswafi, are you there?
I do not.
Oh, he's there.
He's muted.
You.
Stepped away.
Okay.
Okay. Who else?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dariani?
Yes.
And Commissioner Gomez?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for a very awesome meeting, and thank you, staff, for a great job. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very
Happy
much.
International Women's Day, Nicole.
Happy International Women's Day, Nicole.
Happy International Women's Day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, all.